Thank you to Shannon Boston, Margot Mitchell, and Dee Dee Cox for pulling together this event and for asking me to moderate it. I'm very excited. I will say one thing though, just to get us started. I was speaking to our first panelist, Norma Eagleton, over the weekend, and she was talking about how we were standing on the shoulders of giants, and she reminded me of the story of Kate Barnard. Kate Barnard was the first woman elected to statewide office in Oklahoma, the Commissioner of Charities and Corrections, where she advocated for things like child labor laws, humane treatment, and she was kind of, pushed out of popularity when she started advocating for the property rights of Native American orphans whose court-appointed guardians were stealing from the orphans. So Kate Barnard's story of good trouble really speaks to me, and just kind of brings us to where we all are. Over 100 years later, we're sitting here as women and those who support women, trying to see the wrongs of our time and to correct them.
Hello, hi, Regina. Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see everybody.
Yeah. Regina, I have a question for you. Can you describe geographically the area that you represent?
So I represent House District 73, and that encompasses a great deal of North Side going all the way to 63rd or so in Cincinnati. It goes to the downtown area. It goes to the Pearl District, the Kendall Whittier area, the Gilcrease Hills area. I'm naming it in terms of areas as opposed to streets. And I must say, I'm blessed to represent the best district in Oklahoma.
You bet.
Thank you very much. What a pleasure to be with you and with the distinguished panel. My story starts in Oklahoma. I was born in this state. I was reared in Claremore, and in a long time ago, in those days, it was thought that women would learn the skills and the values of their mothers, and would have a life more or less like their mothers. But a number of things happened to our society between then and now. We had the women's movement, we had the environmental movement, we had the civil rights movement. Society changed. We became technical, we became diverse, we became large and away from each other. So women began to have different roles. I went to Stevens College when I graduated from high school, and then I graduated from OU, married, and came to Tulsa in 1962 with 2 children and a husband. I then sort of became cookie mother for a while, involved in various volunteer activities. Tulsa's a wonderful volunteer town. And Tulsa's amazingly welcoming to strangers who have come from elsewhere. Some towns are closed, some cities are sort of closed, and you have to have belonged there for generations to be part of the fabric of the community. But Tulsa's unlike that, and it was welcoming to all manner of strangers and newcomers who came. So I got involved in many organizations, the United Way, the American Red Cross. I was on those boards, the Boys Home Junior Auxiliary, the Children's Day Nursery, things like that. And more importantly, 2 things I think sort of defined that stage of my life. I joined the League of Women Voters. This is a wonderful organization, as everybody knows, because they respect government and they're interested in improving government and participating. And I was invited to join the board of the League of Women Voters. And I thought that'd be a good thing to do. And they said, what portfolio do you want? And I said, portfolio? Portfolio? They said, yes, you must take a portfolio. I chose City of Tulsa, local government, and I began to learn about local government. I went to city commission meetings. I went to county commission meetings. I interviewed office holders. I read charters. I tried to learn. And the league taught us so many things. One thing they said, Norma, remember the important things for every issue is you ask yourself, is this legal? Who benefits and who pays? That's very good instruction. I learned from that. Anyway, I decided to run for office. Tulsa had never in all of its history had a woman commissioner who could vote on the commission. We had, as you have learned, wonderful Kate Barnard, who was Commissioner of Charities and Correction at statehood. She came to Oklahoma from Nebraska and taught school for a little while, and then she began to work for the territorial committee. And she then went to business school and became a secretary. Doesn't that sound kind of familiar? That was appropriate in those days, she thought, and they thought. So she became a secretary to the Territorial Commission. They sent her to the World's Fair in St. Louis, and she met Jane Addams, who introduced her to city slums and the dark side of cities. And she became a reformer. She came back and she was participated in, I think, in the drafting and the passing of the Oklahoma Constitution. And she was the first woman elected to Commissioner of Charities and Corrections. And the Oklahoma Constitution only allowed a woman to take that office. That was the only office available to women. Couldn't be governor. For statewide office, you couldn't be governor, couldn't be lieutenant governor. You couldn't have a statewide office in those days except Charities and Corrections. So she began to reform the state. She worked for compulsory education. She worked on child labor reform, on helping widows who were impoverished. In those days, we didn't have the social net that we have today. She got crosswise with Alfalfa Bill Murray when she tried to champion Indian children who were cheated out of their royalty rights. And she really was a fine and fabulous Oklahoman and doesn't get a whole lot of credit. Although there's a new biography of Kate Barnard by Connie Cronley. She's signing books as we speak today, and we can learn about Kate. Anyway, so 68 years later, the city of Tulsa was a little bit embarrassed that it hadn't had a woman in its government. It'd been governed since its charter in 1908 by 5 men who all lived within a mile of one another. And we thought that was just fine until lately. And the city became a little bit embarrassed. And so they elected me finance commissioner. And I was the first woman who could vote on Tulsa City Commission. We had an auditor who is a member of the commission, but she was not allowed to vote. The city auditor did not vote, but she was really pretty outstanding too. She, after the race massacre, she went to war with the commissioners. They had passed a fire ordinance that prohibited really the Greenwood residents from rebuilding their community because it was too expensive. She went to court against the commission and they won. And Greenwood began to be rebuilt. And I thought that was audacious and courageous. I'm very proud of her. Then Governor Nye appointed me to be the first woman corporation commissioner for the state of Oklahoma. And that was the first elected office, statewide office, since Kate Barnard. I served there for 10 years. And while I was serving on the Corporation Commission, that's our regulatory agency. For those who may not know, we regulated really the economy of Oklahoma. And I went to law school while I was in Oklahoma City. I commuted to Oklahoma City and went to law school, served on that commission for 10 years, then came home and practiced law for 23 years, and now I'm retired. So that's my story.
What a fabulous story. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to have you here today.
Thank you.
So now I'd like to introduce Representative Regina Goodwin, if she'd like to say
She's
a few words
senator.
about. Oh,
No representative.
okay. Yeah, go.
Oh, are you a representative, Regina?
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent.
I had
Yeah.
promoted you.
Well, that's okay. And I really don't have much to say after your introductions. Are you just wanting me to just tell a bit about myself?
Yeah, just your 1 or 2 minute story.
Okay, so I'm Regina Goodwin. I was born and raised in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I grew up actually in the Greenwood district. I grew up on 1415 North Greenwood. I had come from a family that taught me that it's very important to give to the community as opposed to taking from a community. And I'd always been involved in the community. We have the Oklahoma Eagle newspaper, our family does, which is the oldest Black newspaper in Oklahoma. And my grandfather was Ed Goodwin, and he always said that there are always two sides of the story. And Paul Harvey would always say, and now you know the rest of the story. And I think that it's always good to have varied points of view, and my grandfather felt that way. I ran for office in 2015, was elected then. I am a state representative, and we are in Oklahoma. So, you know, we have absolutely a very rich history here, a number of shoulders to stand on. And if I can just do my part, I consider myself blessed and want to continue to contribute. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
That is fabulous. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, Representative Goodwin.
Thank you for having me.
So I am not singing a counselor, Kara Joy on here. So if that is not the case, please speak up. For those just joining, our Representative Denise Brewer was going to join us, but unfortunately she got a death in the family. So we will move forward with our two fabulous panelists, Norma Eagleton and Representative Goodwin. So again, thank you both for being here. I have a couple of prepared questions, but this can just pretty much just be a conversation as far as I'm concerned. I'll try to make sure everybody gets roughly equal time or gets to talk about the things that are most meaningful to them. So we'll go till about 8 o'clock or so, and then we'll open it up to some questions that submitted from our attendees. So I'll pick some of those. The panelists can answer if they'd like, and then we'll do our best to wrap things up by about 8:30. So does that sound good?
Sounds fine with me.
Awesome. So you both kind of touched on this in your introductions, but what was the if there was one thing that made you want to go into public service? Was it an issue? Was it somebody who inspired you? And then
I yield to Miss Eagleton. I'm always going to yield to Miss Eagleton first.
Well, as I said, the League of Women Voters directed me to the city of Tulsa, and I just became very interested in politics. My first campaign was run by my friends. We had all worked in campaigns for a long, long time, and they ran a perfectly wonderful campaign. It could have elected a United States senator. The candidate was really beside the point. It was a wonderful campaign. But I began to learn about and respect government. And I remember what I was campaigning on. I wanted people in Tulsa to know, in this big, diverse city, that your neighborhood is safe only if all neighborhoods are safe. Your street is safe only if all streets are safe. Your park is livable only if all parks are livable. And we tried to do that in the city of Tulsa. So those were the things that I was attracted to. I think that's the special province of women, perhaps, because they have known families and neighborhoods, and that's where they live. And I think that's one of the special things they bring to our government.
I would just say that I had always been involved in community, and actually for decades, I did not get involved in politics. I'd been asked to run for office, and I was like, no, thank you. And actually, someone said to me, the work that you're doing now in the community, you could be doing in a different way. And so literally, it was not planned. I literally, on the day that I filed, did it in one day, filled out the form, got on the turnpike, went to the Capitol, and I did it because I found myself kind of talking to the television, and there was an issue going on in Tulsa, and I was like, oh man, why is that going on? And I said, why am I talking to the television if maybe I can do something to help with the situation? So I literally got in the car, filed for office, and like I say, for decades I had been encouraged, but I said no. And then perhaps on that day, God urged me forward, and I got on the turnpike. So just again, wanting to help community.
that is awesome. I hope we all remember that the next time we feel compelled to talk back to our TV. Definitely great. So Representative Goodwin, you seem to kind of have a reaction about, no, I don't want to run for office. What was it that what held you back?
The same thing that everybody, I think, that's on this panel or that's participating in this tonight. I think we know that politics, the word politics has become a four-letter word for many, many folks. A lot of folks don't respect politicians. They're like, oh, they're all lying. Oh, they're not going to do nothing. Oh, they're more of the problem than the solution, right? So you hear that and you're like, oh, I don't want none of that. I don't want to be a part of being the problem or being perceived as the problem, right? And also understanding that it is a very difficult arena. Somebody once honestly said to me that I was a goldfish among sharks, right? That I wouldn't know what I was doing because folks would eat me alive, right? And you hear all this and you want to just stay in your lane and do what you're doing. And so that's why for so many years I was like, no, thank you. I will try to do what I can. And we had been effective from a grassroots level in many ways. And so that was part of the reluctance to get involved, because no question about it, it is a very cutthroat business. There are folks out there that are always out to get you, create things about you that are not true. And you have to combat that. You have to deal with that. And So those issues come with the territory. So that was part of the hesitancy, quite frankly. And yet, after a while, you realize that the mission or the goal, the objective, the help that can come surpasses all of that negative. So you keep pushing and doing it the right way. For me, I try to do things as God would have me do. And so far, God's kept me. And I want to continue to operate with integrity and do right by all folks. So that's your answer.
Excellent. Great answer. Thank you. Ms. Eagleton, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, I ran for office in a kinder time. Politics was not an ugly word in those days. We respected government. It was an honor and a privilege. And when I got into government, I began to respect the people who served even more. Many people serve, particularly the professionals in government, the public servants, who, not the elected officials. In fact, one time the city treasurer said to me, you know, elected officials come and go, but they don't bother us much. Government is run very well by the professionals who are not really appreciated. So I'm hoping that we can get back to a time where government is not so harsh, where it is not so fragmented, where people are more cooperative and respectful and congenial. Those were happier times for me.
Very true. So in your work, either before office or in office, or since leaving office, are there any particular accomplishments that you are the most proud of, or a particular day where you just said that was the best day ever? I'm glad I did what I did.
Well, I'm proud of many things, but I was mostly proud to be on the city commission at the time. The city was growing and learning and doing things. I was in charge of the beginning of the emergency medical services in Tulsa, EMSA. This was a very exciting and remarkable thing for our city. We had, in those days, ambulances were run by the funeral homes, and we didn't have the emergency medical services that we know today. The funeral homes would send their ambulances out, and they would fight over the dead bodies, and the wounded would sort of lie there because the money was in the deaths and in the funerals. And this was not a good solution. We discovered when we had consultants who came in that on a trauma, you were more likely to live from the battlefields at Vietnam than on the streets of America. And we learned when we developed the EMSA program to take a little miniature hospital to the accident or to the ill person and treat them at the place of illness or hurt, and then take them to the hospital. The EMSA was a national success, and people copied it all over the country. So I'm very proud of that. The other thing that happened when I was at the city, where we had terrible floods. We had 100-year floods about every month or so, and some very, very tragic floods where life was lost. And it turned out that the flood victims began to know more about the city and the rivers and the creeks and what happened than any of us did at the city. These were the years before we had a hydrologist at our city. And the flood victims would come and tell us what it was like. And we would go out and see the damage and see the horrors of the flood. And what we tried to do at the beginning, when the city would flood, a creek would overflow and homes would flood nearby, we just put a lot of concrete and gravel on the side of the creek, and we'd rush the water downstream, and it would flood downstream. So what we learned when our wonderful floodplain management organization began to take root in the city was that we needed to, runoff was a big problem. Houses that had never flooded before began to flood because of all the concrete and the parking lots and the streets and the driveways that had been built. So water rushed off where it had never rushed before. So we learned that we had to have holding ponds and parks, places that the water could settle. And this became a national model. It was copied, and it was a very successful program, and I was so proud to be a part of it.
Those are amazing. I had not heard this story about the ambulance. Like, that is, talk about your incentives, looking at, you know, who makes money and who's benefiting. It's like I'm glad that is one problem that you solved. And yeah, the flood.
Well, there were many people who were involved, and we were very grateful for our wonderful consultants, and the emergency room doctors were part of the IMSA board. They were the quality control for the IMSA program. If there was a problem, there goes my telephone. Right here. I apologize.
Right.
Anyway, if there was a problem, we sent it to the emergency room docs, and they decided if we had followed the protocol might need to be changed. If we'd not followed the protocol, the service was penalized. So it was a wonderful program.
Wow, that is really inspiring. Just you found a problem and people worked together to solve it. So that's great. What about you, Representative?
I think just thinking back, I would say that there were issues as it related to housing and a senior housing facility. And it was a 3-year project, but it was an issue of fair housing and also in terms of ADA, in terms of those that were disabled. And a developer had come in and had done shoddy work. And you had a whole community of senior citizens that were really left to their own devices. And I feel really good about the fact that we fought that for 3 years. And we had the area rehab that needed to be rehabbed. And then a lawsuit followed after that in terms of the violations that had occurred. And it was a very, very sweeping. We were able to engage the housing and urban development on the federal level. They did come to Tulsa. They looked at the situation, and a lot improved on the city level in terms of when they would say, oh, it met code, you know, but it really didn't meet code. And folks had to take a real hard look on how can people best live safely and in comfort. So that will always stand. I still stay in touch with many of the seniors that were helped with that project. And they're just wonderful people. And like I say, you develop really, I guess you would say, lifelong relationships. I remember that project. I remember as it related to women that had been shackled in prison while delivering babies. I did not even know that this existed, that you would be chained while delivering a baby. And I met women over a period of 20 years, and I did research. We brought them all together. They all had the same story. So that was a law that we were able to pass to ban that act of shackling women. Representative Del Curbs, who recently passed in a very tragic way, he was a Republican. And always I try to partner with Republicans to see where do we have common ground, because I am a Democrat. And Del Curbs is one of the staunch opponents to this bill. And God rest his soul, he was against the bill until he ran into some nurses that had observed this happening. And he came back on a Monday after he had left session telling me, oh, I'm not going to support this. He came back on a Monday because he had encountered women and nurses that had witnessed this. And he said, Regina, I'm signing on to the bill. Where do I sign up? And I feel good about, good about that. For those women that are helped, also they're allowed to have a doula if they're delivering, or a family member or pastor present. All of that had not been allowed previously. So that's allowed now. I remember there was a man in prison for life, and we were able to get him out, and he's home now. He's been very productive. And it's those kinds of changes that you can have impact on lives. I think it's very important. I think of the Caregivers Act, which got national recognition and state recognition. And that was something I was very engaged in. And all of us are either going to be caring for somebody or going to be cared for. And we all know what that means when you've got a relative and you're trying to help them out and you're trying to go to work, and everybody knows that story. And so there are funds that are available. As a matter of broadening that scope. That's memorable. And very recently, we have 3 of the known survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre. And I'm a descendant of 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre survivors. That story is very dear to me. My great grandmother had lost property and had gone down to the courthouse for reparations, and it never happened. They had some 14 homes at the time, property and a building all burned to the ground, and never saw a day of justice. But I said, for 107-year-old Miss Viola Ford Fletcher and Miss Leslie Benningfield Randall, who's 106, and Mr. Hughes Van Ellis, who is 100. If we can do something for them right now, let's do that. And it wasn't about a lawsuit, which I support, all of that. But what I'm saying, how can we be kind today? What can we do today? So I initiated this effort to raise monies for those 3 souls. And we were able to raise, with the help of individuals and also with Transformation Church, $650,000 to go directly to those 3 folks. And I wanted them to be able to live in some degree of comfort right now at this stage and age. And so those are some of the stories that I know have impacted lives, and I feel good about. You say, if you never do anything else in the position, you've gotten this done. And so I look at it that way. There's always work to be done, always folks to help. And we've gotten a number of folks, their records expunged, just different issues. But anyway, I'm talking too much and too long.
Those are fabulous stories. Brings a tear to my eye just to hear. Well, for one thing, your passion, and I know that all the folks that you have impacted, I know you're doing good work. So I really appreciate you sharing your enthusiasm and your story with us. Oh, so we have, it looks like Councilor McKee is here. I don't know if she would like to participate. I see her mentioning in the chat, so feel free to unmute if.
All right. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm late. I had a headache, closed my eyes, and then suddenly woke up. A little surprise nap there, but I'm honored to be here with you all. I'm glad I got in time to hear Regina speak. As always, Representative, it's great to see you.
Good to see you.
Yes. Great to be here with you all tonight. Amanda, I will follow your lead. I'm happy to participate in any way, just wherever you'd like me to jump in.
Okay, yeah, well, I'll take this opportunity to invite those who are attending to put any sort of questions that they have into the chat box. Our wonderful Michelle is collecting those in a sheet for me, so I don't have to watch all the scrolling. So thank you, Michelle. So I'll start. So the last question was is there something if you would like to answer this, Councilor McKee, is there one particular accomplishment you're proudest of, or just like the best thing that's happened that you were happy to be a part of in the context of your job? And you might just go ahead and just introduce yourself, kind of what your position is and background. So that'd be great. You are muted.
Excellent. All right. So I'm Tulsa City Councilor Kara Joy McKee. I think I know most of you. I am the City Councilor for the All Souls Church for District 4, which is all of downtown and a big chunk of Midtown. And though I grew up in Norman, Tulsa has definitely become my adopted home. I moved here 8 years ago following my husband, Gene Perry, who was then at the Oklahoma Policy Institute. He lured me up to Tulsa with tours of the Philbrook and the Cherry Street Farmers Market and all sorts of things. And little did I know that I would feel called upon to run for office at the time. I actually had intended to be a scientist. I studied to be an ethnobotanist at university, but life takes twists and turns. And when Blake Ewing decided not to run, I felt that call that, oh, I'm supposed to do this. You know that feeling. Sometimes you get a call, and it was like, okay, I need to give it my best shot. It still feels surprising that I am in this role, and I don't take it for granted, and I feel very fortunate. One of the contributing factors to my choice to run for office. Well, there were two big contributing factors I'll mention. One was, let me do three then. That I worked at Oklahoma Policy Institute for a while, that I spent time up at the state capitol helping people learn to be advocates. And I realized a lot of elected officials don't really know much more about public policy than I do. And I thought, I could give this a shot. I'm willing to listen to people. So I see you laughing, Regina. I thought I'll give this a shot. Now, I admit I underestimated the challenges. This is being a legislator at any level is difficult to an emotional degree that I had not anticipated. And maybe it's not for everyone. Maybe it's not for men. For women, it is tough. But I knew that I could step into the arena from my experience at Oklahoma Policy Institute. I'd also been trying to have a baby for years, and it just wasn't happening. And I thought, I want to make the world better, and maybe I can go help other people's kids. Since, okay, maybe this is not what God wants for me, I'm going to go help other people's kids. So I decided to run for office. As you all know, I got 5 months into the campaign, and okay, I'm pregnant. We're going to do all the big things right now. And so I ended up having my daughter being the first woman to give birth in office in City Council in Tulsa. She still motivates me every day when I'm standing up to the anti-mask or anti-vaccine bullies. It's knowing that she's gonna see what I did when I'm trying to figure out how can we step to sustainability, what can we do for the future, how can we shape our city so that it is a high quality of life, that people can live here, that everybody has opportunities. She's been a motivating factor for me, first motivating me to run when she wasn't coming. Now that she's here, she's a whole different level of a different type of motivation. And then third, from the policy standpoint, going to Tulsa City Council meetings, seeing Vanessa Hall-Harper fighting so hard for the moratorium on dollar stores, learning the history of the race massacre and of Greenwood, and the numerous Renaissance, what is the plural of Renaissance? The Renaissances of Greenwood, and seeing that at that time, Councilor Blake Ewing had her back when sometimes no other councilor did. And I thought District 4, I feel like it is our role to have the back of District 1. We share Greenwood. We have a constituency in District 4 that cares deeply about making amends for what has happened in Greenwood. And I felt that I could help hold that space and get us through the centennial and make a difference. There are many aspects of that work that are ongoing. There are many things that I would have loved to get done already that I haven't, but last May and June, when I spent 5 days down on Greenwood, attending events with the Crutcher Foundation and attending the events of Kevin Matthews Centennial Commission, and everybody in between, I felt that though it may not have been obvious from the outside, from my perspective, we came through that event and we all learned, and we started some healing processes, and we accomplished so much, and we followed the lead of so many Black leaders. I saw so much good happen. And the fearful things that we thought might happen, the white supremacists that might descend on the city, any kind of violence that could have broken out, that wasn't there, not a bit of it. People were kind, people were working together. So getting through and into the centennial was a motivating factor, but it is not an end. It is, as you all may know, I proposed that we make this year, that centennial, kind of the beginning of a process for the council. Every month, I proposed this, Councilor Hall Harper and others were wholeheartedly on board. Every month, we are continuing to talk about the centennial, and in May of next year, we will be doing more to talk about what it's like in that first year of grief. For many of our religious traditions, the first year of grief when you lose someone is very significant. And so we are holding that space for Greenwood in this year, the way that 100 years ago, people had to hold the space for what they had lost, the loved ones they had lost, the community they had lost. So I'm very proud to be doing that work, and so many other things as well.
Excellent. That's very inspiring. Thank you very much. I wanted to Norma Eagleton, I wanted to there's a comment from Julie Sky saying that we're proud to have someone as strong and beloved not only with us tonight, but representing Tulsa. I may have technical difficulties. Okay, let's there's a question from Karen Gaddis. Like your opinion or advice on how to recruit more women to enter politics.
Is that question for me?
Yeah, we could start with you. That'd be great.
I think it's a wonderful question. And I think that these splendid women we're hearing from tonight, Regina and Kara Joy, are inspiring women. There weren't model women in my day who were in politics. Women tended to gravitate toward being secretaries or being nurses or being teachers. And we didn't have the outstanding women that we're listening to tonight. And I'm so proud of them. I think this will encourage women to run. I believe very strongly in the League of Women Voters and in the instructing that they do and the participation that they do. I also know that the city of Tulsa has a number of boards and commissions, and women need to be active in those boards and be appointed to a board and get involved in the city, the life of the city. This is very important. I'll never forget when I went back to my women's college for a reunion. Shirley Chisholm was the keynote speaker, and I don't know if people know of Shirley.
Yes.
She was the marvelous mentor, the marvelous model. Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman in the United States House of Representatives. She was a congresswoman from New York. And in 1972, she had the courage and audacity and strength to run for president of the United States.
Yeah.
She was the very first woman, the first, and I think maybe the first Black to seek her party's nomination. She spoke at our college and she told us that she said she was discriminated against more for being a woman than for being an African American. Isn't that amazing? But she said something I'll never forget. She said, you know, the problems of this very diverse and complex society are so important and so challenging and so serious that we cannot afford to lose any talent. We must employ all of the talent and energy that we can muster. And we must never exclude people because of ethnicity or religion or gender. We must include everybody to meet the problems challenging the modern society today. And I thought that's true, very true. And I think you will see from having heard from Regina and Councilor McKee, how important a contribution these young women have made. It's such a proud time for me.
I have to say this, that you just bring back tremendous memories for me. I had the privilege of meeting Miss Shirley Chisholm, and you're absolutely right. She was everything. And you're absolutely right, that spirit that she possessed, the manner in which she spoke, she was just very, very inspiring. And to your point, when you say, what can we do to encourage women to get involved? Women are already involved, right? Every day they get up and they get up out of bed and they're taking care of households. They're going outside of the house, working in the house, working outside of the house. They're already involved because they're part of the tax base. So I always tell folks, you know, when folks say, oh, you got to get involved in politics, folks are involved whether they acknowledge it, whether they want to be or not. Now, how do we get women to go and run for office? That's a horse of a different color. But I would say that, you know, the talent is there. There's a temperament, I think, that many women possess in their ability to just communicate in a different fashion that I do appreciate. And I'm not saying men don't have it. I'm saying we do communicate a little differently sometimes. And I would say just the talent that they possess, if they can run a household and if they can keep a budget at the kitchen table, they can keep the budget at the White House. They can keep the budget, manage the budget at the Capitol. They can manage the budget at the city council. And I had a great grandmother, quite frankly, that my great grandfather was the businessman, right? And one year he had come home, and this is in the 20s, he had come home and he needed some money, desperately needed some money. A business deal didn't go right, and he didn't know where he was going to turn. And it was his wife that had saved $500 in that day, which was a lot of money. And from that point of her turning that $500 over to him, from that point on, he turned all business affairs over to his wife, right? Because she did demonstrate, she had the ability to produce. So women have it. We just have to know that more and more women are needed. I think we have only out in the state legislature, we have maybe 31 women out of 149. And so we have a ways to go, maybe 20% or so, 21% or so. And so we need more women, right? And I love our men leaders. We all need to just work together, respect each other, and have more regard for each other. And that's the bottom line. But get involved because you're being affected. So you might as well be in a position where you can have some impact.
I love it. And I agree with both of you. And thank you for bringing up Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed. She's a shero of mine as well. And yes, we've got to include all the talent, and we've got to recognize, as you say, Regina, the talents, the involvement that women already have, And we have some unique struggles that I think we as a society could address better. It is a fact that I and my female colleagues have been objectified and treated with scorn in ways that our male colleagues do not experience. I mean, y'all know I've got a protective order against Palte and had to chop down the bushes in front of my house because he threatened me and my baby while I was still running after I had just been inaugurated. And it's not about him, it's about a society that doesn't take it seriously. I mean, doesn't take it seriously when treats elected officials, but especially women elected officials, like we should have expected it. We should just be used to, we asked for this. There's this gaslighting that we asked to be treated like slaves, like subhuman objects because we were elected to office. There have been times when I was just shocked by how much people expected that my humanity was gone because I was willing to be a public servant. And that takes all of us, I think, standing up to the bullies in whatever arena and saying, that's not the right way to speak to another human being. And we need you to step back, to see the people that come into our spaces. And instead of, when there's a known abuser in the community, instead of sometimes I think we are too polite and we try to be welcoming and we try to talk to this person. And we need to set healthy boundaries sometimes and say, no, you have proven to be not a safe person and we need you to leave. And that is hard for us. Women are welcoming, I am welcoming. It is hard for me to set boundaries like that. But I think that there are moments that we need to do that. And when other women see that there will be a community to stand behind them, as a community has stood behind me, but when we see that there is more of that, I think more women will feel safe running. I also think that elected offices need to be paid a living wage. Everybody needs to be paid a living wage, but I joke, one of my mentors, Lintha Wessner, there in Norman, she was a city councilor when I was younger, and she's a part of the League of Women Voters. And I asked her when I was a college student, how did you get to do this, Lintha? How did you get this opportunity? And she said, honey, I'm a kept woman. My husband's a dentist. and that, I never would have expected that in my life, having grown up in relative poverty, that I would ever be in a situation where my spouse was making enough money that I could have a part-time job and work as a city councilor where I work full-time and I raise my baby, but I get paid $24,000 a year.
Yeah.
I'm not complaining on behalf of me, but I know in any other time in my life, this would not have been a possibility. And it wasn't because I, from my working class background, did not have the skill set to be an excellent legislator. It was, I did not have the community resources. I would not have had the childcare. I would not have had the time to put food on the table and read all the agendas and go to all the meetings and study all of the issues. There is a class separation when we don't treat elected office as a professional office. We treat it as a privilege for the wealthy.
Yeah.
I'll just be frank. And that's really not how we want our society to be run. We want our society to be run by the best candidates who are most wise, most thoughtful, most caring and listening, regardless of their income.
And as you say that, the fee to run for office gets higher and higher every year, which I don't like that, just to run for office, it's prohibitive for some folks, just the filing fee.
Yep.
My
For sure.
That is not good. So there's a question from Stacy Lee who makes the comment, all three of you have made amazing contributions through your tenure in office. And we've already touched on a few of these things, but if we could go into some more detail or additional detail, what skills, perspectives, abilities do you feel women in particular bring into public office that are missing in rooms that are filled only with men?
Ms. Eagleton, I'll yield to you because you started this. You were the first.
Did you throw the ball to me?
Yeah. Well, out of nothing but the highest regard, because as you said, you were the first. So I think you could speak best to it, and we can certainly tell you the challenges that we have today. But
Well, I think women bring the skills that they have. Women, this is a diverse society, and women have different perspectives from men and different experiences from men. I remember serving on the corporation commission with two men. There were three of us, and one time we were at a banquet together, and one of the chairman looked over to me and he said, "Norma, was that joke a sexist joke?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "We thought so. We didn't laugh unless you laughed." I think our very presence probably speaks to our need to be at the table. Everybody needs to be at the table. Women do bring a particular perspective because we come from the home, we come from the neighborhoods, we come from the school, we come from the PTA. These are places men haven't been until recently, and now men are beginning to take the household chores too. Thank goodness. This is a great help. So I do think women need to be at the table, just like Shirley Chisholm said. We can't do without their talents. And I also think when I got to City Hall, I think women tried harder, perhaps because they had not been at the table. I know that when I got there, I began reading the charter, and I began reading the water studies that people had done for the city. I began asking questions like the League of Women Voters had told us to do. Is this legal? Who benefits and who pays? These are important questions, and I think women began asking those questions. And it seems to me that the women have made a great difference in our state. I know the two of you have in your positions. And I think it's a shame we only have 20% women in the Oklahoma legislature. We need more. I think it's wonderful that we have 66% women on the Tulsa Council. This is a wonderful thing. This is a wonderful thing. We used to have a little organization called the Atta Girls. And so I say to both of you, Atta Girl.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
And
do
I think-
need those men who can do the home chores too. We didn't mention that. I didn't mention that before, but since you mentioned it, Miss Eagleton, that my husband can cook me dinner, and he can get the baby's diaper changed and get her into bed when I have a late night council meeting. My father, my grandfather, they could not do those things. They did not have those skill sets. They were not expected to have them. It is not a coincidence that I waited until 35 to get married. I was waiting for a man that had all the things that I needed to balance out my goals in life. And I think as we foster that in men, it will help free women up to run for office as well.
And their lives are richer for it. Their lives are richer if they learn how to care for children.
Yes, ma'am.
And how to care for a home and how to expand their horizons. Their lives are richer, and ours also.
That's right. And because I decided to wear my baby the first 6 months of her life, I brought her to every council meeting, to every meeting I was in, and I was breastfeeding. So I breastfed my baby in the meetings, and the mayor and every man in the meetings, not a one of them was ever weird to me about any of it. Just so you all know, they were all really supportive, and the women as well. And it just as an answer to what women bring. Women don't always bring their babies, but when they do, when we're able to bring that piece of things, I felt like it really built the camaraderie between my colleagues and I, and changed the tone of the conversation somewhat. Yeah, and I have to mention my colleague, Councilor Dector Wright, is especially excellent at, but I see Krista Patrick, I see all of us asking a question, and especially kind of like I am just a lady who just doesn't even know about this, just kind of playing dumb and just asking the questions all the time. We ask so many questions as women that some men are great at asking questions. In my experience, the women have been better at asking questions in my limited experience as elected official, that we really, we haven't been shy about that.
That's our job.
And I wanted to add to that for some of the differences that exist, not for all women and all women, but to the point that we do tend to be a little bit more detail oriented in terms of looking, literally reading what's before us, being engaged in the organizational aspect of something that has to get done. A lot of times women are there. I also know that, when we're on the House floor, and whatever anybody's position is as it relates to abortion, when we're on that House floor and we have a man saying that a woman must carry a baby to term, even if she was raped, right? And there's such a callousness, and that it's only the women so far that are speaking to that on the House floor oftentimes, right? And when a man is telling a woman, you have to carry that baby to term, and then he has the audacity to say, if there are some physical issues where the baby is not going to survive and the doctor already knows it, and then that man says, then you have the choice to end that child's life, right? It's those kind of conversations where you have to have women involved, because women are the ones that are as Kara Joy said, women are delivering the babies. Women are carrying the babies for 9 months. Women are nurturing the babies, going through the pains of childbirth. And when we can stand on the House floor and ask a man, have you ever had a baby? Do you know what it feels like to have those pains, right? As you are getting ready to create legislation, forcing women to carry a baby to term that may not live after the birth. It is, that is why women are needed, because we are going to bring a different kind of sensibility and sensitivity to that issue. And of course, this is not for all men. Of course, there are men that understand that. But right now in Texas, when folks are standing up in front of God and everybody's saying, oh, don't worry about those that are raped, we're going to stop rape, as the man suggested in Texas, it's ludicrous, right? So women are needed, our voices are needed, and there are times when we can't always be so nice, as it's been stated. There are times when it's a fight worth having, and we have to be up to the task.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Yeah, for sure. Just a couple last questions. Are there specific issues where you all think that progress is particularly possible? I know that we've mentioned things being very polarized, but if we were to focus on one or two issues that you think that we could make a difference on, do you have any input on that?
I would say on a number of issues, there can be progress. We know that, or we literally would not have gotten into an elected position if we did not think all things are possible, right? But we're also, we're not naive. We also understand that we are living in very polarized times. And I am often often reminded in the legislature, literally, the Republican counterpart will say to me, elections have consequences. And they kind of rub that in my face every day to let me know, you all don't have the numbers to affect this vote. what your thoughts are on this particular issue, we're not going to hear today. But there are also things that we can do outside of the Capitol, outside of that vote, where tremendous progress is being made every day. And there are always good folks in this universe. As bleak as it looks, as dark as it looks, there are folks that want to do better. There are folks that are willing to see what we have in common. There's no way in the world we would do what we're doing if we didn't believe that. So yes, on just about every issue, there's hope. How long is it going to take for us to get there is the issue, right? And I can tell you, for folks that I know, generations before me, whether it was Martin Luther King or John Lewis or my great-grandfather or my mom, whoever it was a matter of do what you can in the time and space that you have now, and get the good that you can out of it. So yes, we can get issues. If you want to talk about criminal justice reform, I think we are seeing something quite remarkable as it relates to Julius Jones right now, someone who was on death row. There's some things happening right now in Oklahoma that have never happened before. And what we had not imagined, 20 years ago. So incrementally, yes, progress is being made, and we have to keep plowing away. Chris Steele, who was the Speaker of the House in Oklahoma, a Republican, and he talks about the transition and the transformation that he gleaned and learned over his period of time, right? When you can see that kind of coming together and you see folks working towards the same goals, yes, a lot is possible in various areas. And I cannot just name one, because I think whether you're talking about housing, whether you're talking about criminal justice reform, whether you're talking about education, there are areas, health. Look, I know what happened as it relates to certain powers being given to the governor by a majority legislature. That does not bode well for everybody. That's the truth. We still have to give voice. And it's the people, right? When you all ask, do you think it's possible? I ask you, do you think it's possible? Because we only go as far as you allow us to go. People elect the officials. So the question goes right back to you. Do you think it's possible? What are you doing? How engaged are you? Are you tugging somebody on their shirt tail and saying, guess what, buddy, you're going in the wrong direction? Are you tugging my jacket and saying, hey, Regina, you're going in the wrong direction? So there's a lot we can do. And I'm talking too long once again. I'm sorry.
You're getting us all fired up though, Regina. I'm right there with you.
That's fabulous. And I will add on to my original question about what sort of areas that we can most focus on for making progress. If Julie Sky asks if there anything that we can do to better support you, for example, showing up for city council meetings.
Oh, sure. Ms. Eagleton, did you have an answer that you wanted to share to her question? And I can go in a little bit if you've got something you're ready to share.
You go first.
All righty. Regina hit the nail on the head that we would not be doing this if we did not see that there are so many opportunities for coming together. And it is strange how far apart we are, because we are still one species. We are humans. Almost everything about us, we have so much that is similar values, and all this focus gets put on the differences and the tension points, because we're trying to grow and trying to live together and figure it out. But I look for those glimmers of hope, even in that horrid city council meeting a couple weeks ago, where people were yelling at me and ripping off their masks and all of that. The people on both sides of that room, the thing they were most afraid about was children. The folks who didn't want to wear masks or take the vaccine were afraid that vaccines are dangerous. They're not, but they were afraid. They've heard some false information and they've believed it. They were afraid that we are torturing children by putting masks on them. They are afraid that masks are poisoning us. And they were afraid that we are poisoning children. They kept bringing up the children. And you know the other arguments for the kids that are in school that are ending up with COVID right now. That gave me a moment of hope in that I was sitting up there, and instead of making taking notes about what I was going to say, I had quotes from all my constituents who had written to me, the doctors, the parents, the principals, who had said, please help us. I was reading their brave quotes as I was sitting there trying to deal with that and drawing strength from that and saying, I'm on the team of the people who are going to be brave in the face of the bullies. We're going to be brave because we're not dead yet. We're right here and we're just going to do our best, and we're going to try to stay calm. We're not going to let them push us off our center. We're going to stay here and be present with the truth. And, to give you a couple of specific issues I'm feeling optimistic about. I am optimistic may offer the wrong idea that I think it would be easy. I am feeling hopeful and motivated about mental health and about renewable energy. Oklahoma is the prime spot for solar and wind. And our city motto is Tulsa, a new kind of energy. Now, all we have to do is say, okay, the oil that built this city, those were brave people who tried to do something important and get this energy. Now we translate that to a new kind of energy. We got the motto, it's right there. I want to see us do that. I think enough people are admitting climate change that maybe we can really get some traction on that. I think we can come together, bipartisan, get some stuff done. Mental health, the pandemic has shaken us all, and it has made us realize how fragile we can be when we are isolated, when we are injured, when we are, scared. And it is the number one reason we've got people living out there unsheltered. It's if we could take the people who are living, who are in mental health crises out of the system of unsheltered people who are out on the streets, then it would be much easier to deal with everyone else. That would take out a huge chunk if we could figure that out. And I think that there is a clear cost proposition to put to that. We put the numbers to that. We get some good mental health care, the good inpatient treatment and whatnot to take that out. And then we start saving the money, and that can make that argument. So those two things I'm feeling really motivated about on a statewide level. At the city of Tulsa, y'all know me. I'm gonna keep trying to bring the science in every meeting. It does help me if you come to the council meetings. It helps if you write to me. It is, especially if you've got good ideas, talking points. Say, hey KJ, say this thing if you've got ideas. But the thing that can help me most is if you are not my constituent, or if you know people who are not my constituents, and you get them to talk to their counselors. My 8 colleagues that I have on council, they hear from me, but if they can hear from you, if you're their constituent, or if they can hear from their constituents who are your friends, that can make a really big difference on any given issue. They really do read these emails. Almost all of us read our emails, answer even if we don't always write back, we're reading them, we're getting that information. And I think most of them want to, at least we're lucky, we're nonpartisan at the city level. We get to really try to pay attention to just what our constituents say, and we don't have, there's good and bad of not having a party affiliation, but that can make a difference. I hope that was useful.
Wonderful. Ms. Eagleton, anything you'd like to add to that?
Well, those ladies have inspired me. They've made me feel very optimistic about our city and our state. I do think that women have particular roles in being, and these 2 women are very good at being truth tellers. Just stand up and tell the truth. Listen to the constituents, know what they're saying, respect them and respect each other, and be truth tellers. I'm appalled at the misinformation that has permeated this society about the pandemic and what and the vaccinations and masks and so forth. Women need to stand up and be truth tellers, stand for the truth and tell it like it is.
I love that. I have spoken my share of truths in meetings, and it's wonderful. So I just wanted to, we have about 10 minutes left. So I just wanted to see if there was any sort of parting thoughts that any of you have, just any sort of quote that gets you out of bed every day, or just words that, or anything that you would like to leave us with. KJ, since you're on our screen, I'll let you go first.
Sure, I'd be happy to. As you may or may not know, I'm kind of a Junitarian. I'm a member at B'nai Amunah and a member at All Souls. And there's a Jewish saying, it's the Perkia vote, that I have had to come back to time and again, especially during the pandemic, because it has, as you say, it's been so hard to see so many people get the misinformation and just run with it, and heartbreaking when I can't save more lives, when I can't protect the people around me. And so I try every day to remember that I am not required to do everything. Neither am I allowed to desist from doing my part. There is a part that is my part, and I need to do that. But I can't do everything. I won't do everything. I shouldn't try to do everything. I just need to do my piece of it. And that, breaking it down to say, this is the part that I can hold. It helps me to reframe and to let go of feeling too much responsibility. No one of us can fix this. It's much, much bigger than all of us. But together, chipping away at it, each of us doing our part, we do make a difference. And we may never know the difference that our one little action may make, but it's worth it. It's worth it.
Excellent.
I would just say, and again, I want to leave the last word, first of all, with the greatest regard for Miss Eagleton. I would just say that we are living right now in a time where it seems somewhat dark. I've literally had folks say to me, they're so determined to not put on a mask or be vaccinated because they talk about their freedom. They've said comments to me like, even if their mother and father were to pass away, so be it, because it's their time. What I sense in those kinds of comments is more of an allegiance to a party or to a philosophy, and not any kind of allegiance to your own humanity. There's no kind of allegiance to just remembering what does it mean to be just a good person, just to not be so selfish and just think and take yourself out of the picture and know this is bigger than all of us. So I'm a firm believer in God. I believe that I am to handle myself a certain way, no matter how difficult it seems. I hold on to hope, and I've learned just from family. My grandmother said a long time ago, I say it all the time, that service is the rent we pay for a room and board on earth. If we're going to take up this space, then let's give. So I learned that early on, and when you know things are not going right, I also learned that it's a dead fish that goes with the flow. So when you see the current is not going in the direction that it should be going, become more lively, become more engaged. And as my mother said, life is for the living. And so live it to its fullest, and understand that this world that we're in now ain't the be all end all, but while we're here, let's make the most of it. So I live with that every day, and I turn it over to Miss Eagleton.
Oh my goodness. Well, I love the energy, and I love the courage of these two young women. I think the things that keep me up at night are education in Oklahoma. I think we can do better. I really do. I think we've got to respect the educators and respect the schools and care for our children. I also think that sustainability is very, very important. And I loved to hear you talk about the new energy. This we need to do, of course, for our state. The other thing that occurs to me, we're going to have some refugees coming into Oklahoma from Afghanistan. We need to remember to welcome the stranger. That's what we learned from the Hebrew scriptures, welcome the stranger. And we must try and not be strangers, to be neighbors to everybody. I regret the tribalism that has occurred in politics nationally, perhaps more than locally. I hope more than locally. I think we have to try and avoid that. We have to try and avoid that at all costs. And it seems to me it boils down to respect and care. And I think women have that kind of talent. And it encourages me to see the two of you.